Hi, I'd like to talk today about VisualMILL. I get asked a lot when the best time to use VisualMILL is compared to using a traditional roughing toolpath. The times when VisualMILL really shines is when you need to remove a lot of material quickly or you're roughing hard material with a really small cutter. And the reason that is the VisualMILL toolpath takes away a lot of the stress from the side of the cutter. I'm going to show you how it does that here in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to program this part with a traditional toolpath and then also with VisualMILL and show you the difference. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the traditional rough. I have a tool here. Let's pull that down. So we can see here that my RPMs is 5,000 RPMs at 20 inches a minute. This is aluminum, so it should work out just fine. So let's go ahead and just click that model and say do it. Okay, so this is the toolpath that we're used to seeing. We can see here, let's go ahead and look at a top view of this. We can see that it just takes that outline and offsets it. You know, this is the kind of toolpath that's been used for decades, and you know, it's fine. It's not optimal, and I'm going to show you why here in a second. So let's go ahead. We're going to simulate this. Let's go ahead and look at a top view. Slow it down a little bit here. So we can see right away the first thing the tool does, it comes in and buries itself, and really that shows in the side over here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can imagine we're going to see it right here in a second. Right there. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this. We can see that the tool is buried inside of the part. Now this is pretty much the worst case scenario when you're machining, right? It's putting the most amount of pressure on the side of this tool. So what we end up doing is we end up programming the whole part for this worst case scenario. That's why it's only 20 inches a minute, because at 20 inches a minute we can take a full depth of cut and still be okay. So let me show you how VisualMILL addresses this. So let's go ahead and get rid of this toolpath. Let's just go ahead and throw that in the garbage. And we're going to go ahead and use this little V here, this VisualMILL. We're going to use the same tool. The first thing we're going to notice is the RPMs bump up and the feed rate increases greatly. We can see that's 300 inches a minute. Now, for those of you that have never used VisualMILL or seen it, that seems a little unbelievable, but because of the way VisualMILL calculates the tool path, that's very doable and very easily achieved in aluminum with a 1/2 inch cutter. So let's go ahead and click do it. There we go. Great. So if we look at this tool path, you can see that there's a lot more tool path on this just by looking at it than with the traditional tool path. If we were to run this at that 20 inches a minute, it would take a lot longer to run. The key is using that optimum feed rate. I'm going to get to how to find that in a second. But what I wanted to show you is how VisualMILL addresses that burying the cutter. So let's go ahead and let's move this over a little bit. Let's go ahead and speed this up. So we can see right away the difference. So you see the tool's never fully engaged into the part. It's kind of taking these side cuts. It's never fully burying. It's going around. Especially over here in the corner. This is where we had that problem, remember? So it's just going through and just really nice even cuts. It's only halfway engaged through the part. And this really takes a lot of that stress out of that cutter. This is why we can run so fast. So I said that, you know, the tool path's a lot longer just by looking at it. So how is VisualMILL faster? So let me show you that really quick. This is not a lot of people realize this. So let's go ahead and we're going to look at, let's fit this. We're going to look at a side view of this. So by looking at this red line down here, that's the tool path itself. But if we zoom in, we can see that there's these little spiral moves. What VisualMILL does is when it's cutting at the level, the finished level, and then it actually ramps up before and then rapids across in between cuts. So when we look at this, the only time that it's really in that feed is when it's cutting, and when it's going in between cut moves, it rises up off of the part and then rapids to the next cut and then feeds down in a spiral motion down. So if we look at the top view of this, not all of these are feed moves. When it's not cutting, it's actually doing a rapid move, and that's key to the speed, because not only are you cutting at 300 inches a minute, but most of these moves are going at the rapid speed of your machine. So it's really important to program to the optimum tool path and the optimum feed and speed for VisualMILL. So how do we know what that is? Well, if you go to the VisualMILL website, you can download this thing called the Milling Advisor. This gives you a really good breakdown of what kind of feeds and speeds you can achieve. So I said this was aluminum, so we're going to go aluminum. You can put in the hardness. Here's the tool diameter, 3 flutes, go all the way down. So here we're saying it says conservative and aggressive. Now a lot of that depends on your machine. You know, if you have an older machine that's not as rigid, you might have to go with the conservative. Maybe your jigs or fixtures aren't really secure. But if you've got that thing clamped down, your machine's nice and tight, and everything's going great, you can do this aggressive toolpath. So you can see here that, you know, if your machine can run at 12,000 RPMs, you can go 400 inches a minute. Now imagine this part being cut at 400 inches a minute. So with VoluMILL, you can really optimize your machine's capabilities. If you have any questions about VoluMILL, please feel free to contact your local reseller, or you can contact Gibbs Technical Support. Thank you so much for watching.